Which Detroit Lions should you be buying in your Dynasty leagues right now? We'll talk about all that and more on today's Locked On Dynasty.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Matt Williamson and Ryan McDowell.
Thanks for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Welcome to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan McDowell. You can follow me on Twitter at RyanMC23. Joining me, as always, is Matt Williamson. Find Matt on Twitter at WilliamsonNFL. Matt, how's it going this week?
Great. We have phenomenal weather here in Pittsburgh all week, supposedly. I'm going to Steeler training camp Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of each of the next 3 weeks and see some real live humans playing NFL football. I'm psyched for that. Broadcasting from down there. And then we have a Memorial Day weekend coming up. So I don't know if any of that's as good as school letting out for you, but it sounds pretty fine to me.
Yeah, that is the highlight. We're wrapping up our final week of school here. And yeah, weather's great here as well. We don't have any football in Kentucky, unfortunately, but I know you're going to have a good time up there. What are you looking forward to seeing from the Steelers?
The obvious thing is seeing all the draft picks, but
sure.
This class, I mean, I've seen Washington, Porter, and Jones in person, and needless to say, all of them are extremely impressive human beings. Like I can't believe we're the same species, but they have a big, impressive, good-looking draft class. I don't know other than that. I mean, I did a podcast today, just a lot of little things to look at, but I don't think our viewers care if Cam Hayward lines up or Connor Hayward lines up in the backfield or as a traditional tight end all that much. But, Allen Robinson can still move around. Calvin Austin coming off injuries. He still is dynamic as last time I saw him. So there's a lot of good stuff. I mean, it's psyched to see them in person. And we sit there and broadcast right next to them.
Where are you right now on Pickens versus Deontay Johnson from a dynasty standpoint? This question was brought up recently. I saw some discussion, and I mean, if you look at the ADP, they're pretty close. It feels like Pickens is trending up and Deontay's trending down. Where are you on those two?
Well, I think Deontay's a massive buy low. I mean, he's not going to have 0 touchdowns again. I mean,
sure,
he's by far their best at getting open. And I always love to reference Matt Harmon, but he is putting out all of his sophomore reception perception stuff. Pickens, Olave, although that whole crew is hitting his site right now. And I've said this kind of all along on Pickens. He's got work to do. According to Matt's numbers, really bad versus zone.
Right.
Not a real diverse route runner, which is partially a Matt Canada issue. But there's a lot of talent there, too. I mean, he threw out names like Dante Moncrief and Parker from the Patriots was
Devontae Parker.
Yeah, Louisville. Don't be surprised if that's what he ends up. And I think he said Pickens was, of all the receivers he's watched of late, the last couple years, the one he's most worried about that people will highlight scout as opposed to looking in the nuts and bolts of what he's doing.
Yeah, that's very fair. And you're right. We definitely trust and rely on what Matt Harmon says. And yeah, I knew Pickens was not necessarily a favorite of his after his rookie season. So we'll see how year 2 goes for George Pickens, but definitely potential to be some fool's gold there.
Yeah. Very impressive in person. I mean, I know most people don't get to watch his practice like I do. He also could be great. Like, I'm not saying get him off your fantasy team right this minute.
Sure.
Yeah.
We snuck in a little Steelers talk, but we are focusing, as I said earlier, on the Detroit Lions today. We are continuing our team-by-team look at players that are buys, sells, and holds. We're trying to pick one from each team. Sometimes we will agree on those, and sometimes not. So we'll see how that goes. We're covering the NFC North this week. So we'll talk Lions today. We'll hit the Packers tomorrow. A couple of interesting teams that have made quite a few changes, Matt. So let's talk Detroit Lions here. Let me give you the rundown. They have 8 players currently in our ADP from Dynasty League Football. Amon-Ra St. Brown tops the list. He is the wide receiver 8 and the most valuable member of the Detroit Lions from a dynasty standpoint. Jahmyr Gibbs is close behind him at RB6. Jameson Williams, wide receiver 36. David Montgomery is running back 34. Sam Laporta, tight end 10. We've got another rookie here. And already in that tight end 1 range. Jared Goff, quarterback 19. Hendon Hooker, quarterback 28. And Marvin Jones rounding out the list way down there, actually, wide receiver 108. So, Matt, let's start with the player that is your buy, the guy that you are shopping for in your dynasty leagues this offseason.
Okay. Real quick before I do, can't help but a shameless plug, a little cross-pollination here. As I did on Peacock and Williamson, we referenced you quite a bit. But on Monday and Tuesday, all my dynasty ranks we're doing on P and Dub. So go check that out. So, yeah, a little bit of correlate there. My buy is my favorite wide receiver from last year's class. Speaking of Harmon, and there's not enough to go off of. I'm still in on Jameson Williams. I mean, 2 big hits to his career with coming in the league injured, as we knew, and now the suspension. Mm-hmm. But I still think he's really good.
Yeah, I do as well. I'm really not sure what to do with Jameson Williams, honestly. I mean, we saw such a small sample size last year. I believe he was on the field for 6 games, and I think he totaled 6
rounding
targets.
Back into shape too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's right. And exactly. It's tough to say how close he was. Certainly he was not 100%, we assume. But just it looked really bad, right?
Yeah. Right.
I hope he was not even close because it looked bad. Made a couple of big plays, 1 big catch and a big run as well, and had another long touchdown catch called back, and that's kind of it. That's pretty much all. And now we're going to have to wait another 6 weeks to see him, or another 6 games to see him once the season starts, as he serves that suspension. So, yeah, just another knock here to Jameson Williams' value. But if you're a believer, like it sounds like you are, Matt, then maybe this is good news as it gives you that buying opportunity, because the price has dropped a little bit over the past few weeks post suspension. What if you're going shopping, what are you willing to pay for Jameson Williams? You giving up a 24 first rounder for him?
Well, I mentioned my dynasty rookie ranks. I mean, I would rather have him than Mingo, Addison, Flowers, probably Johnston. Smith-Njigba versus Williams is a conversation for me.
Oh, wow.
I think I'd rather have JSN, but I don't love his landing spot. Like, I don't think I could start Smith-Njigba in week 1.
So you're willing to give the 6 or 7 in a single quarterback league this year?
Yes, I would.
Yeah. I think that would buy him in most leagues. Looking at the trade finder, there's a few interesting ones here. Jameson Williams plus AJ Dillon and a 2nd rounder for Devontae Adams. So that's that's one of those win-win type of deals. You assume a contending team and maybe a rebuilding or a younger team. Jameson Williams and a 2nd rounder for that 24 first rounder. So here you get Williams plus a 2nd for a 1st. Jameson Williams for Cam Akers, even swap. I'm not even in on Williams. I'm not in on Williams, but I'll take him over Cam Akers at this point. Ooh. So,
but a varied opinion. I mean, anyone that drafted him this time last year is pretty frustrated.
One more for you. Jameson Williams and a future 2nd for Kenneth Walker. Where do you stand on that one?
Very fair.
Yeah.
That's about right for me. Yeah. I mean, Walker's stock took a hit too.
Sure. Absolutely. I think the player I am buying here, and I'm shopping in the in the expensive part of the store here. I want Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's the wide receiver 8 in Dynasty. He's a most likely a second or a third round pick if you're doing a startup draft. So he's not going to be cheap. He's not going to be cheap in trade either. But I have him ranked even higher than this. I would have him closer to my wide receiver 4 or 5 spot, and honestly, just like him more than the consensus. So even though I'm paying up, it still feels like a little bit of a discount based on where he's coming in ADP, where he's coming in consensus rankings. What are your quick thoughts on St. Brown?
Well, Harmon loves him. That's a good step in the right direction. Keep
I like it.
Referencing. Yeah. I think his game translates for years and years in a Keenan Allen manner. He didn't make any of my 3 categories, but he definitely would not have been a sell.
That makes me feel better. We're going to talk about those sells as well as some players we're hanging on to later in the show. We'll do that right after this.
So, folks, I'm always late to the game on NBA, but lately I've been really into it. The draft is over, so I've kind of focused my attention at nights to watching these games, and FanDuel's been tremendous for it. So make a fast break to FanDuel during the NFL playoffs, because right now, new customers can get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. They have all these different promotions every day, which are really fun and exciting as well. The app is safe and secure, and maybe best of all, you get paid instantly. So not everyone can say that. Trust me. There's no better place to bet on all the playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get that no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA.
We're talking Detroit Lions buys, sells, and holds. We are interested in buying those wide receivers. I like St. Brown. Matt likes Jameson Williams. Matt, let's move on to some players we're maybe a little concerned with, players we would be selling from this Detroit Lions roster. Who is yours?
Okay, real quick to kind of tie last segment into this one.
Sure.
Montgomery was my runner-up for buy, and Gibbs is my runner-up for sell. In one word or 2 words, pass protection. I just don't know if Gibbs is good in pass protection yet. And we often talk about why don't young running backs see the field immediately. He's not very big, and he wasn't asked to pass protect much, and I know Montgomery's good at it. So with the immense steam they have going in opposite directions, I think it might be a bit too much. But my sell is Sam Laporta, who I love. I mean, I think he's a really good prospect, but you taught me a very valuable lesson. How long have we been doing this? A decade ago.
Long time, yeah.
Yeah, that rookie tight ends, go buy them at Thanksgiving or after their rookie season, not now.
Yeah, we're going to agree here. Laporta is mine as well, and it all comes down to this ADP. He is the tight end 10 already. I like the player. In fact, when we looked at we looked at some of the values right before the draft. He was the guy I was loving in that 3rd round range. He was the tight end 5, seemingly locked in as tight end 5 at that point. I just think he's being overvalued right now. Pretty simply, he jumped ahead of Michael Mayer in our ADP, also being drafted ahead of some, I would say, unsexy veterans, David Njoku, Evan Ingram. Both of those guys had really strong years last year in Cleveland, Jacksonville. Greg Dulcich, Chigo Okonkwo, he's being drafted ahead of those two. Who, I mean, there's still questions about both of those players, but they're kind of the trendy guys to target coming off of solid rookie seasons. Laporta feels like 6 or 8 spots too high in tight end rankings. I'm shocked he's already in that tight end 1 range. So really just based on that alone, he would be the sell for me. And then you think about,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I think he's benefiting from a weak rookie class. So in rookie drafts, he goes a little higher than he usually does. And the Lions are super hot. They're playing on Thursday night in Kansas City, and they're the hot new team, and might be getting a little ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, we do. No matter how talented they are, we do expect rookie tight ends to generally start their career slowly. I mean, we even saw that with a guy like Trey McBride last year, who entered as the top rookie tight end. And for reference, Trey McBride is tight end 19 right now in our ADP. He's 150 overall. I expect him to take that job from Zach Ertz. If not this year, then certainly by 2024. Trey McBride is a player you should be buying in your dynasty leagues right now. Not Sam Laporta. If you can flip Laporta for McBride and get a pick on top of it, that's absolutely the type of trade you should be making. I
wonder who I liked better at this, coming into the league, because that's basically where McBride is right now. That's a great guy to bring up in this conversation.
Yeah. The other thing to think about here is, where does Laporta rank on his own team when it comes to targets? He's obviously going to be behind Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think once fully healthy and once past this suspension, he would be behind Jamison Williams as well. You assume he's going to be behind Jahmyr Gibbs as far as targets, or at least in that same range. So we're looking at Laporta at best the third option on his team, maybe the fourth option on his team. And, if you're a tight end not in consideration for that top two spot, it's going to be tough to get that consistent production. So again, I really like the player. I like the situation, has a chance to be the starter almost right away for Detroit, but just being overvalued right now.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you.
Matt, we'll finish up our Lions conversation with a couple players we're hanging on to as the 2023 season nears. We'll do that next. Thanks for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow on the show, we'll talk buys, sells, and holds for the Green Bay Packers. I can't wait to hear what Matt has to say about Jordan Love. That's tomorrow. Check back with us to hear that conversation. Today, though, we are talking Detroit Lions, the team that beat the Packers in the season finale last year. Matt, we talked St. Brown, Jamison Williams. We talked a little bit about Gibbs. We talked Laporta. Who's the player you're holding on to? You want to see what happens in 2023.
This is a super boring selection, because if you drafted Hendon Hooker, you're probably holding him no matter what. And he's not for this year. But at quarterback 28, I mean, this is obviously super flex heavy conversation. Maybe you wait 1 year, 2 years. Maybe he never gets a crack, but he is like the definition of a hold. But at quarterback 19, I think Goff is a fine hold as well. So I wouldn't mind having both those guys in a deep league.
Yeah, Goff almost has to be a hold. He doesn't have a ton of trade value, even in super flex leagues, compared to other quarterbacks. But he is going to start this year, and he was very solid and productive last year. So we expect that to continue. You're right. I think both of those quarterbacks are holds. The guy I went with here is a name you mentioned earlier, David Montgomery.
Okay.
And I think we're discounting him a little too much with this move to Detroit, and certainly the draft pick of Jahmyr Gibbs didn't help Montgomery's value, pushed him down a little bit further. But he's running back 34. I mean, the neighborhood looks right when you look at the names. He's down there with Alvin Kamara, who's lost a ton of value, and Alexander Madison, AJ Dillon, some of the rookies like Kendre Miller and Roshan Johnson. So that range feels right, which is why I don't think he's a buy or a sell. If you've got him on your roster, hang on to him. You're going to be able to start him a handful of times at least throughout the season, especially if Gibbs shows some of those concerns that Matt mentioned earlier as far as pass protection and really kind of feeling out his role in the NFL. So I'm with you. I would say Montgomery he's my hold, but I could I could see a case for buying him as well.
Yeah, he was my runner-up buy, and then I agree with everything you said. He's a professional running back. He knows how to get yards in this league through the air or on the ground. Good offense. I mean, they can be closing teams out late in games. Probably their short yardage guy as well, and a very good run blocking line.
We've hit most of these players in this Lions offense, most of the notable players, but I really am curious what you think the first 6 weeks are going to look like for this team, because as you mentioned, the schedule is tough, at least week 1 with at the Chiefs. They're going to be without Jamison Williams. The depth chart is pretty ugly at wide receiver after Amon-Ra St. Brown. We mentioned that name, Marvin Jones. They bring him back after a few years away from Detroit. Mm-hmm. I mean, who's the wide? Right. Is Marvin Jones the wide receiver too? And who else besides Amon-Ra St. Brown is catching passes for this team through the first couple months of the season?
That is a little alarming, because does that boost Laporta or Gibbs? I say no, because they're rookies and they're going to be acclimating anyway. And can Marvin Jones hold down the fort? Just not be terrible? Maybe. I'm with you on St. Brown, but boy, I bet he sees a lot of attention early in the year. They're a pretty aggressive organization, though. I mean, could they go get DeAndre Hopkins or something? Mm-hmm. Could they go make a move? Because I've heard their name thrown out there for veteran receivers, but it's a little frightening.
Yeah, it's just ugly. It's ugly right now. Amon-Ra St. Brown has been compared to Cooper Kupp, and both of those guys are going to be in position, especially early in the season, to catch as many balls as they can, because they are going to be far and away the top target on their respective teams. Just another reason why I love Amon-Ra St. Brown as a trade target, as a target if you're doing a startup draft. I'm in one right now with a bunch of folks from around the industry from different sites, and I traded up to take St. Brown late in the second round in a super flex league, and I actually have Kupp on that same team, and really liking that roster.
Real quick, I like the Kupp conversation, because I kind of mentioned, boy, St. Brown's gonna get a lot of extra attention. The way they play, I don't think it matters. They're often out of the slot. It's not like there's a safety rolled over the top. I mean, they might just be more targets. Well,
and they're both obviously they both excel at getting open, at finding those holes in the defense, and that's why they see a ton of targets, and that's why they catch a lot of those passes. Matt, anything else on the Lions as we wrap this one up?
No, interesting team, hot team, but I do think there's a Football Outsiders plexiglass principle here that usually in history, when a team takes a massive step forward, they usually take a small step back. Like, I don't know that they're all of a sudden going to compete with the Eagles in the NFC,
Who's the 2024 Week 1 starting quarterback for the Lions?
I'm going to say Goff still. I thought he played quite well last year. Yeah.
That's what I would say as well.
Yeah.
That's going to do it for our Lions conversation and for today's show as well. Please make sure you download and subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Remember to follow the show at Locked On Dynasty. Follow Matt at Williamson NFL, and I'm Ryan MC23. We'll be back next time with more Locked On Dynasty.